Welcome to another edition of Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. And also, this could be a war in Ukraine playlist. So my task today is to summarize, analyze, and discuss what is going on in terms of peace possibilities in Ukraine now in June 2024. Is there a chance for peace in Ukraine? Now, the reason that that question is so important is because we seem to be now at a kind of a crossroads with very threatening words coming from the Deputy Security Council Chair Medvedev in Russia, but also very assertive and very threatening statements coming from Blinken about strengthening NATO and also about intransigence of Zelenskyy. So what I'd like to do is to discuss the motivations, intentions, and the interpretation of why these leaders are saying and doing what they're doing now at this crossroads. I'll start with President Putin. What's new and interesting in the last 10 days or so is that returning from Tashkent, where he had a meeting with the president of Uzbekistan, Putin gave a very interesting press conference and he said some very, very, very important things. And it should be noted that it was after his trip to China and after his trip to Minsk, which means that it was all coordinated with, with President Xi of China and Lukashenko, Russia's ally in Belarus. So what he said basically is that it can be summarized as an offer of peace. He said Russia is ready for negotiations, that the formula to be discussed is that which is based on the 2022 Istanbul proposals, and the key of that, which was that Ukraine should be a neutral country, and then the borders could be denegotiated, essentially up to the borders of Donbass, the areas that are currently under Russian control. He made it very clear that the peace deal could be based on the borders of today. And that also leaves a room for negotiation because Russia does not control today totally the territory of Donbass, and also not Zaporozhye. The city of Zaporozhye is under Ukrainian control, and the city of Kherson, which officially is Russian territory, but it is now under Ukrainian. The most important issue that Putin mentioned was the legitimacy of Zelenskyy, because his term expired on the 20th of May, and according to Putin, the legitimacy is questionable or non-existent. And according to the Ukrainian constitution, it's the Speaker of the House, of the Parliament, of the Rada, who should be the, performing the duties of the president until new elections. But new elections cannot be held because of the law of the emergency situation in Ukraine. And so they are now in the bind that they cannot have new elections until they abolish this law. And also there's another law that prohibits negotiations with Putin. But the important thing I want to mention is that if Zelenskyy chose, or anybody who is a legitimate president of Ukraine, if he chose to accept Putin's condition, take him at his word and say, okay, fine, we agree to be neutral and we agree that we lost the territories that we lost. Let's sign peace. Peace could be had next week. In other words, there is a chance, a theoretical chance, that the war could be over. But they're not going to do it, because to do that, you would have to accept that these territories are lost. And even though they will never be able to win them back militarily, even with NATO support, they still are reluctant to make a bold step forward and say, okay, we accept that they're lost, let's sign peace. The second reason that Zelenskyy cannot sign this peace is because he would have to be elected. Once there's peace, there's got to be new elections. And he may win if he presents peace. He has a chance. But at the same time, there are other candidates, such as Zelenskyy and several other candidates. So in order to stay in power, it is more advantageous to him to say that Putin is a liar, Putin cannot be trusted, and continue to play the role of military leader. Moreover, I mean, 60 billion is a lot of money. Most of it stays in the United States, but now reports are increasingly saying of pervasive corruption. And a lot of that money goes to Zelensky for the rainy day, and a lot of his entourage, people around him. So peace deal means money is off, the war is off, and therefore you would have to live on your own. Well, they will be, Ukrainians will be helped by Europeans anyway for the restoration and all that. But he is not interested in this because that's the end of the supply and it's the end of his term. That also means that Zelensky is completely dependent on the United States, that the United States can move and remove him at any time, and that is exactly what is unacceptable to Russia, because Russia wants, as Putin said, ironclad guarantees of security, and that means that it's not only Zelensky's signature, not even the signature of a legitimate president of Ukraine that Russia needs. Russia needs the United States to back this deal and to have a neutrality status recognized by all major powers. So now I should also mention that the mood in Russia is not in favor of signing anything. In fact, I would say that Putin would have a hard time, even if he wanted to sign peace deal on the conditions he mentioned, with just the two provinces. And here's the reasons: because those who argue that the war should continue say that the remainder of Ukraine would always be against Russia. They would always claim territories that were lost, and it would always want to win them back. And the only guarantee that they will not be turned into a Platzdarm or a kind of a base of military action against Russia is to go all the way to Lvov and to the Polish border. And that way Russia could guarantee its security regardless of whether the United States likes it or not. So there's a strong opposition to Putin in terms of some kind of agreement now. Most people that I hear on the talk shows and debates are hoping that the Ukrainians are not going to take Putin at his word and the war would continue to the victorious end. Now, Europe. We all know about Macron's recent belligerent statements and Scholz and especially Stoltenberg, the chair of NATO, that the war would continue, that 40 billion a year the Europeans take upon themselves to supply to Ukraine, and that Macron allows French missiles to target Russian targets. And Scholz said also that they could shoot back, and it's all presented like escalation. To which Putin answered actually in this interview, which I referred to in Tashkent. Putin explained it very well. He said Stoltenberg should know, because he's the secretary of NATO, that if you're talking about missiles that can hit deep into Russia, they are programmed not by Ukrainians because they don't know how to do it. Scholz, in fact, himself admitted that Taurus missiles, if they are ever delivered to Ukraine, would need German engineers and officers to load them with the program to hit certain targets. Putin explained that these kinds of missiles have satellites that guide them. And these satellites belong to the United States and to Western powers. And therefore, if any of those missiles hits a target in Russia, the West is directly participating in a military assault on Russia, which legally, by the United Nations Charter, gives Russia a right of self-defense. And they can hit back the targets where this has come from. If these, in other words, places where these missiles are stored or manufactured, or the airfields of the aircraft or anything that launched them, and so on. In other words, he put it like this: we would have a legal right to defend themselves. And he put it even more bluntly. He said that these small European countries with dense populations don't understand that they risk their very existence. This is a hint on the use of nuclear weapons. Now, the reason that they talk about nuclear weapons is actually because everybody in Russia kind of believes that if it were to happen, that the entire NATO with Article 5 triggers into action against Russia, including the United States, Canada, and 32 countries, Russia will be outnumbered. in terms of military personnel and gunpowder. And therefore, its only option is to go nuclear. And therefore, this is why Medvedev says, you're playing with fire, because if something hurts Russia inside Russia with any kind of missile, we cannot be sure whether it's military, whether it's nuclear or not, and we will respond back immediately. So this is why it's such a dangerous situation. Now, just one thing that I want to also mention: if it happens to be a nuclear exchange, people are always saying this triggers World War III. No, it's not going to be World War III. No, even in World War II, Spain didn't participate in Europe. There was peace there after the Civil War. Turkey didn't participate. Bulgaria didn't participate. In North Africa, it's only Libya and Egypt for a short time were involved in the war. The rest of Africa was not involved in this war, even though they were officially colonies of the British and the French. Latin America was not involved in the war. And so India marginally was involved in the war. In other words, if there is is exchange, it would be between the United States and Russia, and perhaps some Europeans, if they target anything in Russia. The rest of the world is not going to be touched. So the United States and Russia destroy each other. Who is going to remain the man? Who stands after that? Let the Western leaders think about it. Maybe China, maybe India, maybe Africa, Latin America, they all would stay and continue. So it's kind of suicidal for the United States and for Blinken to talk like they do now, that they will adjust and they will adapt, and they maybe will hit Russia with some kind of missile. Now, European politics. The European politics is that what should be added to the threatening words of Macron and others is that I live in France, and I know public opinion of France does not want any war with Russia, or anybody else for that matter. They're much more preoccupied with their pouvoir d'achat, which means a power of purchase. Le Pen said she's a viable candidate for presidency. She said, no, we're not going to be involved in any war with Russia. And this is irresponsible what Macron is doing. Same thing is happening in Germany. Scholz is sitting on the fence saying, we will do those, we will allow them to use Haubitzers, and we will not allow them to use Taurus. Well, the Alternative for Germany party is much more outspoken. We don't want to be dragged into the war, and we will win. If they win elections, this would of course be translated into action. And about half of Germany doesn't want any involvement in another war with Russia. Italy also said very clearly, one thing is to support Ukraine defend itself, another one is to supply missiles or be involved in any way in a direct confrontation with Russia. So briefly, Europe is not as united as Stoltenberg and Blinken are saying. About half of Europe is against this, and the big powers, all of Southern Europe, is against direct confrontation. Italy, Spain, Greece, Bulgaria. On top of it, of course, Serbia, a de facto ally of Russia, Hungary and Slovakia. All these countries are against a military confrontation with Russia. Now, the cheerleaders of the Hawks is Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. All of them three put together is 8 million people and diminishing, which is like less than the population of Moscow. And of course, Poland and Britain. These are the Hawks who want the war. But they have no means and they have no missiles. They have nothing that can threaten Russia in any serious way, except Britain with its storm shadows, to which there is an appropriate response in Russia. Now, finally, about the American position. Now, it seems like the conclusion of what I'm saying is that Europe is pretending like it's very, very strong, but in fact, they know they have nothing threatening to Russia that could be of serious use. And their public opinion is totally divided, and the majority do not want any confrontation. Zelenskyy already said he doesn't want anything that could disturb his grabbing more money and continue to pose as a great cheerleader for continued war effort, whereas his country is going down in pieces. The United States is this. My understanding is that Biden is committed, because he said, I will not Putin win the war. He's committed militarily. Russia has shown that it is winning. It is just in May, according to the latest figures, there were 35,000 casualties, Ukrainian casualties, 260 tanks and motor and vehicles shot, including 4 Abrams tanks. Russia is superior militarily, and there's nothing the United States can do. So my understanding is that they're going to continue the verbiage and to say that they will do this and they will put the roadmap to NATO. The more they say so, that Ukraine will be in NATO, the more there is a determination in Russia to stop it and win it fast. And so this is what I think is going to happen. Russia is going to put on the speed in trying to win as much as they can by November. Europeans are going to talk tough but do little and appear as if they're going to be strong, but in fact they won't. And as far as the United States is concerned, they're going to talk tough and appear that they're doing everything, and they will try to hold Ukraine in fighting mode until at least the elections. And after that, nobody knows what's going to happen, who is going to be the president, and how is it going to be resolved. So this is my brief rundown on what's going on. And before I say goodbye to my dear subscribers, I want to remind you that on any topic that I am speaking to you, there are playlists. And there's a playlist on Ukraine in war. There's a playlist Russia, post-Soviet Russia under Yeltsin and Putin. There's this playlist is issues of contemporary politics, and of course there is also AP European politics, everything from Renaissance to the present, and also Russian history with Dr. Brovkin. So please subscribe, and I love your comments, and please continue to do so. Until next time, goodbye.